Hello everyone. So in this video we would be discussing about number theory. And number theory is one of the very starting topics when it comes to competitive programming. So we will first discuss a bit about the basics. So let's say first we would be discussing about GCD and LCM of two numbers. So let's say we are having two numbers, let's say integer a and b. Integer means they can either be positive or could be negative or zero. Whole number means natural number means it would always be positive integers. So let's say 1 2 up to infinity. These are this set of these numbers is called natural numbers. And then we have whole numbers, which is nothing but natural numbers along with 0. So 0 to 1 to infinity. This is the whole number range. Okay, we discussed about integers, natural numbers, whole numbers, and then let's say some real numbers, maybe some decimal number 1.23, something like that. So these kind of numbers we usually store it in float or double data types. So on in this number theory topic, we would be mostly discussing about integer. Let's say we will be given two integers. Let's say mostly we would be discussing mostly all our discussion would be revolving around integers. So let's say we are given these two integers, and then there are two standard terms. So first one is GCD. So let's say GCD is nothing but greatest common divisor. So let's say we are given two integers 2 comma 3 2 comma 4. So what is the definition of GCD? It is the greatest common divisor. So let's say by divisor what I mean is let's say we are having a number, let's say 10. So one is its divisor. Let's say the number, those numbers which completely divide this number are called its divisors. So let's say 1 would be the first divisor, then 2 is also, this number is also divisible by 2. So 2 would also be one of its divisor. Then 5 would be one of would also be one of its divisors. So by divisor, what I mean is all the numbers which completely divide the given number, those numbers are called its divisors. So let's say we are given two numbers a and b. Let's one is 2 and another is 8, some let's say, and then we need to find the greatest number which divides both. So let's say one is dividing both, but it is not the let's say we are finding the greatest number, so we should be checking for 2. So then we come to 2, and 2 also divides both, then GCD becomes 2, and we would be checking for 3. But as soon as the number crosses 2, we are pretty sure that it would not be able to, let's say all the numbers above 2 would not be able to divide 2. So that's why GCD of this would be 2. So if we are given number a and b, then the range in which GCD will lie would be from 1 to mean of a comma b. Because let's say a is the smaller one, then after a all the divisors would not be dividing a. So they would not fulfill that criteria, like that number should be dividing both a and b. So maximum till we can go is minimum of both two numbers. So this is the all about the GCD. So let's say in case we want to find GCD of two numbers, so what we would be doing is, so let's say we would be iterating from I equal to 1 to min of a comma b, and then we would be checking if I divides both a and I divides b. If this condition is fulfilled, then I is a GCD. So in this case we would be assigning GCD as I. So in this case we would be first checking with 1, then 2, 3 up to this minimum of a and b, we would be checking each number one by one and checking like if that number divides both of a as well as b, then in that case that number would be our GCD, and then we would be continuing with next number because we are finding the greatest of all those devices. So by doing this, the time complexity, so in the worst case, so let's say we might have to travel to let's say we would be traveling from 1 to a. Let's say a is the minimum one, so the time complexity would be O of min of a comma b, which is not a very good time complexity, because let's say in case a and b are very big, then finding GCD itself would be let's say taking a lot of time. So this is not a very good approach of finding GCD. So in most of the cases where we would be finding GCD, if we use this solution, then we would get time out, because we would be taking a linear time in calculating GCD. So now we would be discussing more efficient approaches of finding GCD. So before that, going to those efficient approaches, just I want to briefly touch upon LCM, which is least common divisor, least common multiple, sorry. So let's say we are given these two numbers. So we would be finding a number which is multiple of both these two numbers, which let's say we are finding a number m, LCM, let's say m, so that this number 2 is also divisor of it and 10 is also divisor of it. So we could let's say find infinite numbers and that set would be increasing, where that number is divisible by both 2 as well as 10, but out of those set we are interested in finding the least one. So let's say what we would be doing is, in this case one number is 2 and another is 10, so 10 is the least common multiple, because 10 is divided 10 divides 10 as well as 2 divides 10, and this is the minimum. So let's say the next would be, let's say 20, then 30 or something like this. These is the list, but out of those numbers 10 is the least one. So let's say if we are finding LCM of a and b, then as the LCM needs to divide as these numbers need to divide LCM, so let's say a is the minimum and b is the maximum of these two, so LCM should be start either the minimum possible value of LCM should be b in this case, because any number which is below b should not be let's say n number is lying between a and b, then we would not we would not be able to divide that number, right? So in this case, finding LCM, so LCM would be starting, we would be searching our space from max of a comma b, because whatever is the value of max of a comma b, if we are searching in the smaller search space, then the let's say in this case the b number, the LCM would not be b would not be able to divide LCM, because LCM is smaller than b. So in that case that is not possible. So the minimum possible value of LCM would be b, which is maximum of a and b, and then we would be finding let's say if b satisfies let's say b divides a, then b is the LCM, else we would be searching for let's say next number. So what we what is the code for this? For int I is equal to 0, I would be starting from max of a comma b, and it would be going till infinity, let's say. And if I is multiple of a and I is multiple of b as well, then this is the first number which is able to which both a and b, both of these two divide. So I will be returning, like I will be just breaking out and returning I. So this is the least number which satisfies both conditions. It's a multiple of a as well as b. So the time complexity of this approach would also be linear. So let's say what is the, let's say, maximum number in our search space, it would be like, in worst case it might be searching for all those numbers, and that would like would lead to linear time complexity, and which is not a very efficient solution. So let's say when if we are given two numbers, then there is one property. So let's say a into b is LCM of a and b into GCD of a and b. So if we let's say are able to find GCD of a and b in some efficient time, so let's say not taking linear time or something, then LCM of a comma b would also be, we would be able to find that in very less time complexity. So now we would be focusing our discussion around finding GCD in efficient way. So by doing that, we would be able to find LCM of those numbers as well is in very efficient time. So let's say we would be now coming to the most efficient, more efficient algorithm for finding GCD. So this is Euclid's division lemma. So this is very basic, one of the basic property, let's say, which GCD satisfies. So let's say we are finding GCD of two numbers, and out of these two, A is the maximum and B is the minimum. Let's say we are going with this case. As A is greater than B, so let's say when we divide it then by B, then there would be some quotient. Let's say some Q into B plus remainder, which A comma B, right? We are able to divide, and then this is the remainder and this is the quotient. We are able to express our dividend as product of quotient and divisor as plus some remainder, which was some remaining number which was we were not able to divide. So in this case, let's say, and there is one property. Let's say if we are finding GCD of A comma B, let's say there is this number is x, which means x is able to divide A as well as B, right? So in this case, GCD of A minus B comma B, because x divides A, x divides B as well. A minus B will x will also divide this. So GCD of A comma A minus B comma B would also be x. So we got GCD of A comma B as GCD of A minus B comma B, which is, let's say, using this term we can write GCD of A minus 2B, 3B, 4B, something like this. So let's say at some time it would be A minus Q times of B comma B, right? And A minus QB is what? So let's say GCD of A minus B is also A minus B is also same as GCD of GCD of A minus B is same as GCD of A, because x divides x divides B, x will also able to divide A minus B, and GCD of A minus B and A would also be same as GCD of A comma B. So in this case, let's say this is A, this is A, and this is A, and this is what? A minus QB is A modulo B. So GCD A modulo B comma A. Which is also GCD of A modulo B comma B, right? A modulo B out of B or A modulo B, which one is smaller? Because we are dividing A, we are taking mod by B, then it would be lying from 0 to B minus 1. So let's say we are writing B like maximum one as first, and then modulo B. So this is the property of GCD, and by using this property we would be using recursion and finding GCD. Let's say we are finding GCD. This is the maximum of those two numbers, max, and this is min. In case we are finding, let's say we would be doing first check. If B is greater than A, then return GCD of B comma A. B comma A. GCD. By calling this line, we are making sure that the first parameter is the bigger one and the second parameter is the smaller one. So let's say in case the smaller one is 0, in case the smaller one is 0, then by definition, let's say we have a which is some positive number and then 0. So let's say what we would be doing, we would be going from min of like we would be going from 1 to min of these two, right? And what is min? So let's say uh, what should be GCD of any number with 0, right? So let's say we are starting at 0, then 1 2 3 and up to a divides 0, right? And a divides a as well. Any number after a would not be able to divide a. So in this case, a would be the greatest number which divides both of these two numbers. 0, any number would be able to divide 0, and a, any number, let's say any divisor of a would be able to divide, and the max divisor we could get is a. So in case b is reduced to 0, we would simply be returning a. Like this is the GCD. And then else if b is not 0, then we would be using Euclid's division lemma. We would be supplying b like GCD of a comma b is as same as GCD of b comma a modulo b. A modulo b means the number would be lying from 0 to b minus 1, and at certain point this will reach 0, and in that case a would be our answer. So this is the recursive function by using which we would be able to find the the GCD of two numbers a comma b. And now coming to its efficiency, like what would be the time taken by this algorithm. So let's say out of these two numbers, a is the maximum one. The time complexity is order of log of a. Let's say we would not be discussing like in detail about the proof. There is mathematical proof of this let's say time complexity, but you should know that like by using this algorithm we are able to find the GCD in log and time. And if you have watched my yesterday's video, then you would be able to relate that like order of log and time is very much efficient as compared to linear time. Order of a, let's say if a is in the range 10 raised to power 6, that is 1 million, then it would be taking 1 second for finding GCD of those two numbers, where in this case it would be matter of microseconds. So this is the efficiency we get when we reduce linear solution to the logarithmic solution. So now this is the best way, or at least like the most efficient way till now to find GCD of two numbers. So in log and time, log of maximum of a comma b, we would be able to find GCD of those two numbers. And now let's say we get GCD of a comma b as x, then using that product property we would be able to determine LCM. LCM into x is a into b, and then x is a cross b comma GCD which is x. So if we are able to find the GCD in log and time, then LCM would also be, we would be able to find in log and time. So this is one thing which I wanted to discuss. And now there is one extension of Euclid's division lemma. So now we will be talking about that. So yeah. So let's now discuss the Euclid's division lemma, the extension of it. So what it says is, let's say if we are finding GCD of a comma b, and we are let's say using this division Euclid's division lemma, we found the GCD of numbers of a comma b is g, then we would be able to express this GCD as sum of, let's say there would be two numbers x comma y. These are some integers. Let's say their value could be either 0 plus some plus 1 plus 2 plus 3 minus 1 minus 2 minus 3, any integer. They could their value would be any integer, but the GCD would be, we would be able to express it as sum of these two numbers. So let's take an example. So let's say 10 and 20 are two numbers. A is let's say 10, we are taking maximum one as A, and this is the B. And then let's say GCD of these two numbers would be 2, and then are we able to express this as sum of 10x plus b 2y. So let's say by taking x as 1 and y as let's say 8 minus 4, this is minus 8 and then 10 and 2. So in this way let's say the value of x would be 1 in this case and y is minus 4. So this way we are able to express their GCD as some let's say some coefficient multiplied let's say any coefficient multiplied with that number and their sum. So any number picking, let's say we are picking any two numbers a comma b and we are finding their GCD, and let's say their GCD is g, then we would be able to express g in terms of a and b, ax plus by, and now x and y would be either positive, negative or zero integer values. So why we are studying this? So there is let's say let's say if we are able to find x comma y, x and y, these two coefficients, then we would be using this result in let's say in one of our next lecture. So in one of our lectures we would we would be finding modular inverse, and in let's say to find modular inverse of two numbers we would be leveraging this concept. So I will be discussing this in detail now. So how we can find these two let's say how we can find these two using this algorithm. So let's say we are modifying our GCD finding algorithm as, let's say, it would not be returning an integer. What would it would be returning? It would be returning GCD of these two numbers, x comma y, right? And it would be taking a comma b, and a is the maximum one. If this is a minimum, then we would be swapping it. So let's say when it comes to a, b is 0, the smaller one reached 0. In that case, you know, answer is a, GCD of is a, and let's say ax plus by is a, then we clearly see x is 1 and b is 0, b is 0. So in this case x would be 1 and b would be 0. So we handle the base case of this recursion. Now when it so let's say now base case is handled. Now let's say we are making a recursive call. So we are making recursive call to GCD of b comma a modulo b, and we got, let's say, g, their GCD would be same, and then we got a dash and b dash, let's say something like this from this call. So what we mean, we would be able to express g as sum of these two. So let's say a dash multiplied by b, and then b dash multiplied by this second term. So g would be a dash into b plus b dash into a modulo b. This is the remainder. What we can write is a minus b by a, now a by b into b. What is the remainder? Let's say whatever the times we could subtract b, we subtracted, and that's the remainder remaining. Okay. And now let's say we g as a dash b plus b dash a minus b dash a by b into b, and g, same g we could also write as ax plus by So we will be finding coefficient of x. We will be finding x, and what is the coefficient of a? So let's say checking it again. So a dash b, we got a dash and b dash as its coefficient. So we are able to express it a dash into b and this, and then a dash b plus b dash a minus this. So let's say this, we are able to separate a here, b dash into a plus let's do calculation this calculation again. So let's say we are finding using this extended Euclid's division lemma, and we are finding GCD of a comma b and finding x and y for these two numbers. So let's say we are returning GCD extended, and we would be returning g comma x dash comma y dash, x comma y. These are the coefficients. So if we already see, if b is 0, then we would be returning a comma 1 comma 0. This is the tuple we would be returning. But in case let's say these are not 0, then we would be making call to GCD of GCD extended b comma a modulo b, and we would be getting g, because GCD would be same, and then let's say x dash is the coefficient when let's say we are finding the GCD of this these two terms, and y dash is the second coefficient. So by using the Euclid's extended division lemma, we would be able to write g as x dash multiplied by the first number, which is b, plus y dash multiplied by the second number, a modulo b. So let's say if we write this, x dash into b plus y dash into a modulo b can be written as a minus a times b into b. And then simplifying it, x dash b plus y dash a minus a y dash times a by b. And this is g, and g is also equal to ax plus by, right? So a, comparing those two equations, a is this, x is y dash, and what is y? Y is let's say we are finding x and y in terms of x and y dash, because we already get, let's say using this hypothesis step, we got x dash, y dash and g. So using these x dash, y dash, we would be calculating x and y, and we would be returning answer. So let's say this is y, and what is the coefficient b? This is x dash into b. A is this, and what is b? This is b, right? A modulo b into b. This would be b. Yeah, we would be able to subtract b, and let's say a minus b times, we would be able to subtract b, and this would be the remainder. So this would be b, right? And then when it comes to comparing the y value, let's say we are finding b, which is x dash minus y dash into a by b. So we have let's say in our current call, we have a, we have b, we have x dash and y dash, which we got using hypothesis step. We would be able to generate x comma y, and we also g would be the same. So what we would be returning now in our final step is g is as same as a recursive call. What is x? X is y dash which we got from that recursive call, and y is x dash we got again x dash and y dash we got from the recursive call into a by b times y dash. A and b we already have the values of a and b, and by plugging these we would be able to generate the entire tuple and we would be returning it. So this is the entire Euclid division lemma, extended version of it, extended version. So by doing this, let's say for any two number a comma b, we are able to calculate its GCD as well as number a and b such that number x and y such that we would be able to write GCD as sum of some coefficient which is x multiplied by first number some coefficient y, and we will be able to calculate g, x as well as y in of log n time, where n is the max of a comma b. So in logarithm time we are able to find GCD as well as these coefficients. So this is all about Euclid's extended division lemma, and we would be using these coefficients in our further lectures when we would be discussing modular arithmetics in detail. So it's all about Euclid's extended division lemma. So let's now discuss the next topic. So now let's say one of the more let's say prime numbers is also one of the very important topic when it comes to competitive programming. So let's say what are prime numbers? So let's say if we are dealing with any number p, then let's say we are calculating its factors or divisors. We are calculating divisors. Let's say we are currently the current number is 10, then 2 1 comma 5 comma 10, these are the divisors of this number. So let's say if we are finding all the divisors of this number and the count of those divisors is 2 with let's say 1 as well as the p number. So what does it mean? Let's say 1 will divide everyone. It was not divided by 2, it was not divided by 3, it was not divided by any number from 1 to p. So p is the last number which divided itself, because any number will divide itself. So and within this range no other number was able to divide the p. So we say p is a prime number. So by definition prime numbers are those numbers whose number of divisors is just 2. First one is 1 and second one is let's say that number itself. So let's say we are discussing 4. So what are the divisors of 4? 1 2 4. So apart from 1 and number itself we found one more factor, one more divisor of this number. So 4 is not a prime number, and all the numbers which are not prime numbers, let's say all the whole natural numbers which are not prime numbers are called composite numbers. So we discussed the what are prime numbers. So let's say we are discussing, let's say is 2 a prime number or not. So what are the factors of 2? 1 comma 2. So it seems like 2 is an even number. So let's say we would be having its factors, but it would not be prime number, but it's a prime number. In fact 2 is the smallest prime number. So let's say what are the factors of 2? 1 comma 2, right? So 1 will divide 2 and 2 will also divide 2, and there is no number except 1 and 2, the number itself and 1 which can divide these two numbers. So by definition 2 becomes the prime number and it's the smallest prime number we'll have. And then 3 would be the next one, and then 5 would be this the list will continue. So again, the prime numbers are those numbers whose number of divisors are just two. First one is 1, the number 1, and the second divisor would be the number itself, and there is no other number except those two which can divide p. This is the definition of prime numbers. So let's say we would be writing this check prime function. So let's say we are given a number n, and then we need to check if this number is prime number or not, if it is prime or not. So let's say we are first discussing the brute force approach. In brute force approach, what we would be doing is we would be iterating from I equal to 1 to the n, the actual number, and we would be checking if the number has a factor, and if it has a factor we would be counting the divisors plus in this case. So we would be plus equal to this number. If this is a divisor, then we would be incrementing our count. So at the end, if the count of divisors of this number is 2, which is obviously, let's say 1 would be dividing it and another would be n, and there is no other number in between which divided that number, then this number is prime number. So we would be returning this, if whether this count is 2 or not. If this count is 2, then this number is prime, and if this is not 2, then this number is not prime number. Now again, this is very brute force and very inefficient solution. What would be the time complexity? We would be iterating over all the possible numbers. Let's say if n is of order 10 to the power 6, 10 to the power 10, or 10 raised to the power 11, 12 of this order, then we would be checking every possible number, 1, 2, 3 up to 100, then 200, and all these numbers we would be checking, and it would be taking, let's say, to check these many prime numbers, it would be taking 1 second. And if this number is this much, then to check even the if this number is prime or not, it will take days. So this is obviously not a this is O of n solution. This is not obviously very efficient solution. So we would be now discussing the more efficient solutions, the better solutions. So first thing we would be discussing is, so let's say when there is a number, and if let's say one of its factors is f, then another factor, let's say we are able to divide it by f, and then n by f is let's say remainder is 0, and n by f is also a number. So let's say if n this is n by f, so let's say if f is smaller than root n, then n by f would be greater than root n. So if f is a factor, then n by f is also a factor, because let's say if f divides n, then n by f also divides let's say f divides n, then there is no remainder, this one is 0, and whatever is the result n by f, let's say we get in some number is the resultant, and then we would be able to divide n by f as well. So if f is a factor, then n by f would be also one of its factor, and let's say f is ranging from 0 to root n. So we are discussing how we can find the number of divisors in a bit efficient way. So let's say when we are iterating from 0 to root n, so let's say if number I divides n, then I would be one of its factors, divisors, and then n by I would be also one of its divisors. So we can simply let's say iterate in this range, and from this root n to n range we would be able to let's say find, let's say if f lies in this range, and n by f will lie in this range. So all the factors which would lying in this range would be covered even if we iterate in this range. So let's say we start iterating in this range. So for int I is equal to 1, to I into I, like we are iterating just till root n and I plus plus, and if n by I is 0, which means I divides it, we would be doing count plus 2, which means there would be two factors, one lying on the this side of root n, another would be lying to on the this end of this root n spectrum. But there will be a special case if n is exactly root n, so which means I into I is n, like exact n, then in that case let's say n by I and I would be root n both, so it would be only one factor. So if this is the special case, we would be doing count plus plus, else we would be incrementing the count by 2. So by doing this way, we would be able to generate the count of divisors of n in O of root n. So let's say we significantly reduced our time complexity. So when it was taking let's say if earlier it was taking 10 to power 6, 10 raised to power 6 operations, now it would be just taking 10 raised to power 3 operations. And this is like super reduction. If it takes 1 second, then it will be taking milliseconds. This is one of the optimization which we can do when it comes to check prime. But again, root n itself is, let's say this solution, let's say if we are able we need to check if a certain number is prime or not, to check that we are doing this heavy computation. So this is also like not the most efficient solution. So like we would be discussing the most efficient solution in some time. So again, root n is efficient, but when it comes to finding check prime for multiple times for big numbers, then this solution would not be the best solution. So we would be discussing the best solution again. But before going for that thing, one thing I want to discuss is prime factorization of any number. So let's say if we are given any number which could be prime, which could not prime. So any number, we are able to express it as power of prime number. So let's say this is one prime number, it's raised to power p q1, then p2 is the next prime number, is raised to q2 something. Let's say if p is some prime number is not a factor of it, then its corresponding power would be 0, right? So let's say by taking an example, n is 10, we would be able to express it 2 cross 5, and 2 raised to power 1, 5 raised to power 1, 2 is a prime number, 5 is a prime number. So any number which could be prime, let's say if it is prime number, then it's 1 and 1 is not a prime number, p raised to power 1 only. This is the only expression we will be able to express p in this form. But any composite number for that matter, let's say 12, 2 raised to power 2 into 3 raised to power 1, right? So this is prime number, p raised to power q1, p2 raised to power q2. So we would be able to express any number, any natural number in powers of prime numbers. So we would be able to factorize it with respect to prime numbers. So let's say if we need to find let's say all those prime factors. So let's say we are generating let me take the next slide. Let's say we are doing prime factorization of a number. We have this p number, which is not a, like let's say a number is n. We want to express it as primes p1 raised to power q1, prime 2 raised to power q2, prime 3 raised to power q3, prime, let's say n prime number qn. These could be either 0, 1, or any power greater than equal to 0. So let's say we first found the first prime number, let's say the smallest prime number which this divides. We divided n as many times as it was divisible. So let's say q times we divided, and the number is reduced by let's say p raised to power q1. The new number is n is reduced to this number, so n is now this, n now contains n is reduced to p1 power q1, and then we stored p1 is the first prime number which was able to divide it, and q1 is its corresponding power. Now we would be doing the same operation. We would be finding next prime number which this number, let's say the p2, and next prime number which divides this number, and then we would be keep dividing this number until this is divisible, and we would be able to generate p2 raised to and its corresponding power. If does not divide, then obviously this would be 0, and we would not be storing those. So by doing this, what we would be, let's say at each step we would be reducing n by some of its factor, and then we will be generating prime numbers. So in this case we need let's say we need to check what's the next prime number which divides, what's the next prime number which divides some numbers. Let's say for any number we should be having the list, any prime number, the list of prime numbers which it divides, right? So for this purpose we need efficient way for finding prime numbers. But so let's assume we have that way, and we are having access to these prime numbers, and let's say we by doing some magic we are able to generate p1 p2 p3. Let's say this is the smallest number which will divide it, something like this. Then what would be the time complexity of the entire process where we are generating the prime factors? Let's say we are having this number n, then in the worst case how long it could go. So let's say this is 1, this is root n, and this is n. So let's say what would the worst case? So n is some, let's say prime or something, right? In that case, because we would not be reducing n in that case, otherwise n will keep reducing. So let's say if we are going till root n, and then if we don't if we are going till root n, and then let's say we generated, this is p1, whatever the prime numbers whatever the prime numbers it was having, and at last we keep divided it, and the number is reduced to some x or something. So we already check all the prime numbers up to root n, right? And whatever the next let's say number lying in this range, there it could not exceed let's say 1. So let's say if there is two prime numbers in this range which exceeds root n, so let's say p1 into p2, and let's say it is greater than root n, it's greater than root n. So overall this result would be greater than root n, right? Which is not possible. So when we are generating all the prime numbers, at last after doing, let's say going till root n, from root n to n there could be at max one prime number, and let's say we keep dividing. Let's say when we are finding any prime number, we are dividing it as many times it is divisible, and let's say the number is reduced it by n by 2, and then n by 4, and at last it was reduced to some number. And if this number at last it could be either 1, so let's say all the prime factors lied in this spectrum, and let's say the number itself is reduced to n, or at max one prime factor could be exceeding root n. And let's say when we divide, let's say we divided by all the factors of let's say we divided with p1 p2 and whatever the remaining number, if that number is not equal to 1, then that's the last remaining prime factor. So this is the way we prime factorize any number. So any number, we are given any number, let's say by doing some magic for a particular number we are able to find the smallest prime number which it divides. So we got p1, let's say for an n we got p1 using some method, some black box thing for now. We divided n as many times as it was divisible with p1, and we generated this power, and then number is reduced to n raised to power p1 by q1. Again p2, we would be doing the same thing with p2. We would be dividing as many times as divisible with p2, and we generated the corresponding power of p2. And by doing this, let's say up to root n, in the worst case we might go to root n, and at last, let's say whatever the number we have reduced, if it is not equal to 1, then that's the last number remaining. If this n is not 1, then that's the last prime factor which is lying in this range, the root n to n, because there could not be more than two prime numbers lying in this range, because their product itself will exceed n. So this is the prime factorization. Like any number, we would be able to express it as powers of prime numbers, prime factors. How we can get these corresponding factors along with their power, we would be able to generate this in root and time. This is all we need to discuss about prime factorization. So now let's move to the magical thing. Let's say how what's the most efficient way of finding prime numbers. So the method we will be using is called sieve of Eratosthenes. So in this method, let's say we are finding all the prime numbers from 1 to n. N is, let's say, 10 is to power 6. So what we would be just doing is, let's say we would be creating an array of size n, and every index, let's say ith index, it would be Boolean array. It would contain either 0 or 1. If its value is 0, then it means it is a composite number, it's not a prime number. If it is 1, then it means it's a prime number. So let's say if we need to check if number I is a prime or no, we can simply check. Let's say sieve of I, and if it is 0, then I is not a prime number, and if it is 1, then it is a prime number. So this is constant time access. So let's say we need to build this sieve first, so it will take some time complexity, let's say, and in the subsequent operations, if we need to find, let's say, if this number is prime or not, then in the constant time of one access time, we will be able to find this. So now we would be focusing how we would be generating this sieve of Eratosthenes. Let's say for doing this, what we would be doing is, we would first be initializing it with 1. So let's say every number is prime for now. This is let's say this is 1, this is 1, this is 1, this is 1. Every number is this is 0th index, first index, second index, 3, third, 4th, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. So let's say by definition we know one is, let's say we would be initializing 0 with 0, because 0 is not a prime number, 1 is also not a prime number, 2 is prime number. So let's say what we would be doing is, we would be going from 2. So let's say what we know is let's say this number is a prime number, so all of its multiples would not be prime numbers. So let's say this is 2, then what would be this first let's say multiple, let's say except this number itself, it would be 4. So it would go to the 4, it will make it as 0. It would go to let's say after what are multiples of 2, it would go to 4, then it would go to 6, then it would go to 8, it would go to 10, it would go to 12, it would go to 14, and it would go to 16. And every number which is multiple of 2 would be marked as 0. right? Because 2 is one of its its divisor, so those multiples can't be prime numbers. So again we would be going with 3. We would be doing the same process. We would go to its first multiple, which is 6. We would be making it as 0, which is also 0, so we would not be updating anything. We would again be going for 9, which is 1. We would mark it as 0. Then we would go to 12, which is already marked as 0. We will go to 15. We will mark it as 0. Now we would do for 4. 4 is already 0, so let's say some number in the previous one. So let's say from 1 to that number. Let's say if we are currently standing at this number and it is 0, that means any let's say any number from 0 to x minus 1 was able to divide this number and it made a 0. So that number might will also mark its multiple, let's say 2x, 3x, because that number is divisor of x and it would be divisor of 2x and 3x and 4x and everything. So we might be, let's say that number already might have that number should have marked all of its multiple as non-prime. So we don't need to take any action when the number is 0. So let's say when it comes to 5, it is 1. It is 1, it means it is a prime number, because till now we have iterated from 1 to that number, and there is no single number which is able to mark it as non-prime. So this by definition is prime number. So if we are reaching at any number I, and if that is 1, then that is prime number, and we would be going for all of its multiples. So second multiple is 10, which is already marked as 0. 15 is the next one, and let's say 20 is the next one, and we would be marking as 20 as 0, and then 25, and like this. Let's say similarly we would be going till, let's say, O of n. We iterated over all the numbers in this range. So let's say if save of I is 1, which means there is no element in, let's say when we are standing at I, we have iterated from 2 to, let's say, 1 to I, right, in this range, and there is no single element which was its multiple, which was its divisor, so it automatically becomes prime number. This is prime number. So if we are going to an I, and if that I is having value as 1, and because we already have checked for all the prime, we have checked for all the numbers in the range 1 to I, and no number was able to divide it, and then this number is prime number. So we would be going for all of its multiples. So let's say int j is equal to 2i 2n, and we would be marking sieve of j as 0. So this is the very basic approach for building this sieve, and let's say by running this loop, so let's say it seems like some O of n square approach or something. At now we will be doing some optimizations now. So using this approach we generated a sieve, let's say, and after this one step generation we would be able to quickly access ith number in a constant time. So let's now discuss some optimization in the sieve code. So let's say we are iterating from 1 to n, right? Let's say if we are currently discussing some number I, let's say if we are discussing the very last n, and let's say if it is prime number, then any number will mark it as non-prime. If it is not a prime number, any number will mark it as non-prime. Let's say this number, it was a multiple of this and it marked as non-prime. But let's say if till root n no number was able to mark it as prime, then because there is no factor in this half, as we saw earlier, let's say if there is one factor from 1 to root n, then there is another pair lies in root n to n. But in case there is no factor here, then there will not be any factor in this range as well. So if there is no factor, or there was no number in 1 to root n which was able to mark n as non-prime, then there would not be any number in the root n to n. So by default n becomes prime, and if it was there was a number, then it is already marked as a non-prime. So let's say in either of the cases we need to just check up to root n numbers. So let's say from 1 to root n, if n is a prime, then this range is sufficient to mark it as non-prime. Like in case it is a non-prime number, it's a composite number, this any factor would be lying in this range. This range would be containing for sure any one factor, and it would be marking it as non-prime. And if it is prime number, then again let's say like we this would be 1, so no number would be able to mark it as prime, non-prime. So in reality we don't need to go till root n. Let's say from 1 from 2 to root n also, if we are able to iterate our I, and if we are able to iterate in this range, if we are able to iterate in this range, then all the prime numbers would be marked as prime, and all the non-prime numbers would be marked as non-prime. We don't need to traverse further. So this is the first optimization. The outermost loop need to run to root n times as well. This is a very good reduction from root n to root n. We are able to n to root n. We are able to reduce the time velocity from n, the first loop, to root n. The very good improvement. Second optimization we could see. Let's say in this loop we are starting from 2 to, and then every multiple of j plus equal to I, every multiple of I, 2i, 3i, and then I, j is this iterator. So let's say if we are standing at a particular I, a particular j, then and we are marking all the, let's say we are standing at an I, we are 2i, 3i, 4i, we are marking all of its multiples as non-primes, right? So let's say we are standing currently, the number is I, so all the numbers, let's say 2, 3, all the prime numbers in the range, let's say lying from 1 to let's say lying left to I, uh, lying left to I would mark, let's say the 2 was there, so all the multiples of 2 have already been marked as non-prime, right? So do we need to do for 2i, because all the factors of 2i are already marked as non-prime. Then 3i also, 4i, let's say 2 the fact like 2 has already taken care of this, so all the numbers are already taken care. We just need to start from I cross I. So all the numbers behind the I have been already taken care of, and we can simply start from I cross I into I, like the I square, and then go all up to all the factors of I. This is second optimization. So then now the modified code is, so let's say we are iterating I from 2 to root n inclusive, and if sieve of I exist and it's 1, then means I is a prime number. We would be going for all of its multiples. J is equal to 2i, 3i, so we will be skipping this. We will start simply starting with I cross I, and j is less than equal to n, j iterates with I increment, and we would be marking sieve of that j as false, because we any multiple of that j lead us to j, and by doing this operation at last all the non prime numbers would be marked as 0 and the prime numbers would be having this one state. So this is the most optimized version of sieve of Eratosthenes. And let's say coming to time complexity, so let's say it seems there is like we are running two loops, but let's say when I is 2, so let's say when I is 1 the loop run for n, and then if I is 2, then let's say we are incrementing it by 2, let's say j is 4, and then n by 2 would be the times the second loop would be